Hey everybody, welcome back to Laser Engraving 911. So a couple weeks ago, I got something pretty cool in the mail for my EUFYMAKE. It's a little accessory called the ULTIM8 Jig, and I think you're gonna be really interested in what it can do. So let me just show you this real quick. Big old orange thing. Look at that. So you're probably wondering, what is this? Why do I need it? And does it work? And in this video, we're gonna find out exactly that. So if that sounds like something you want to get into, then buckle up, get your pen and paper out, because we're about to get into this big old orange thing on Laser Engraving 911. All right, so let's dive into this thing. So if you're wondering, this unit was sent to me as a beta unit, and this is a pretty dang cool accessory for the EUFYMAKE UV printer. And I'm already seeing, without really using it too much, how much value it has. But let me just show you kind of what came in this beta unit kit that was sent to me. And I'm pretty sure this is exactly how the final unit's gonna come, with a few little tweaks. But they actually sent me some test printing pads for the small bed on the EUFYMAKE, and then it also came with some large paper test printing pads, which is pretty cool. I could always use more of those instead of cutting up pieces of cardstock. And then after I got into there, we get the big ULTIM8 Jig mat, and we also got a smaller mat that works with the mini bed, but we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. Let's talk about the main chunk right here and all these little pieces. All right, so what you're looking at is this silicone flexible mat that just lays perfectly right on top of the large bed of the EUFYMAKE. You can use either side of it. If you wanted to use this as just a silicone mat, you could just print out some shapes like you've seen me do on cardstock before, and then place your objects in those shapes, because remember, this is silicone and the cured UV ink is not going to stick to the mat. So you could technically use the slick side if you really wanted to get super accurate registration. You could just print outlines of whatever you're about to print on. Now, you won't really have a way to hold those items down, but I just wanted to point that out. So when you're using the jig side, you're gonna set your mat on there. You're gonna use these little metal clips. Were actually designed to clip right onto the mat and right onto your large EUFYMAKE bed. They just snap in, and that's what holds the mat down. There's no glue, there's no other stuff there. So you've got these 4 pins, and then you've got these little bits and bobs, which they've actually put a lot of thought into. So you've got a very low profile little L brackets, right? They're super thin. And then you've also got some thicker ones too that are thicker, and they all have pins that match up with the pin bed, so you can build your own jig, right? So depending on the size of your object, some of these are put right offset to the right, and you can see on the Kickstarter page, what the offsets are on these. It's pretty cool. Some of them are offset a little bit more, and some of them are right down the middle, and that allows you to set up any different shape object and get right up close to it. So that's pretty cool. It also comes with these little metal pieces right here. And I guess what you're supposed to do is, if you have some really, really thin paper or super thin stuff that you need to print on, you can put these little magnets that are supposed to come with it, or you can just buy these off of Amazon, and you can put a few, and they fit perfectly in these little holes. Make yourself a little square. And then if you had like a piece of paper that you needed to print on, and you just wanted to hold that down right there, since they're magnetic, you could just do that or that to hold it down, or you could even take it further out just so it's a little something holding it flat. You could put some on this side too. And basically it comes with all these little tiny, super low profile clips that use these magnets that you put in the bed. And when you're done using these magnetic hold downs and you've got your print done, they're really easy to just pop out. You can just reach underneath that and just push up, and you can pull those magnets out, or use the other magnets to pull them out. Like that too. So that was pretty cool. So you've got thin little jig fixtures, you've got thicker jig fixtures, and then you've got ultra thin jig fixtures. So pretty much the sky's the limit with this thing. So let's just say I wanted to jig up a few of these leatherette patches, right? So I've got like 5 of these leatherette patches. I got a big hat job. You can either build it with straight edges, you could build it with the L's. Pretty much the sky's the limit. So I would just probably And you can, orientation is completely up to you. So you could just put it right there. But the magic about this is that it's going to hold everything straight. One other thing I noticed that they thought of, they realized that there's a certain height that the EUFYMAKE can go and still get good prints on. And even though these little L brackets are higher than the print, and that is where the leveling will happen, it's still close enough to get super accurate prints. Anything higher than that, you're not going to get accurate prints, but they thought about that. So even their highest fixture is not too high to still get good prints. So I would just set those up like that, and you can just keep going and going and going. Let's see. Is that a center one? Yeah, there you go. So I think you get the idea. So when you're done printing, however many you want to set up, you just pull your prints off. You just set your new patches in there and run the repeat feature, which you're going to see me do in a second on the mini bed. And then you're good to go. So this mat and this system is definitely something I am glad that I have now in the shop, because it's going to make my production workflow so much faster, and not have to worry about overbleeding. If I want to overbleed the object in here, that's totally fine. One of the things I did kind of think of, and it reminded me back my other video that we did on printing on a row mark. So remember what happened when I printed a lot of heavy stuff on the thin row mark, is it actually started to bow from the heat from the UV lamp, and actually started to kind of warp the acrylic a little bit. Maybe I could use some of those magnets and put some below and then 2 on top in the corner. That might work. Ooh, let's try that real quick. Put that there and then slide that over, and then maybe put a magnet on top. Ooh, look at that. That's pretty sick, dude. Look, I'm just figuring out new ways to use this thing. So I could use these little magnets. I could put some up here too. Let's see, let me get these off of here for a second. Oh yeah, I'm going to town now. So now I got magnets underneath the acrylic, and to stop it from lifting or bowing, I can put another magnet right there, because now I've just made it magnetic. Genius. That's probably why they call it the ultimate jig, right? So even new ways to use it. So now I've got, you can see this, I've got a magnet holding this acrylic down without using any of the fixtures. That's pretty awesome. So as you can see, lots of different uses for this mat. And I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring you over to the EUFYMAKE and show you the mini mat and print some magnets with it. And you can kind of see me go ahead and use these same fixtures, but on a micro level. So let's go do that. All right, so look at this thing. Look at how flexible this silicone mat is, and it is sized perfectly. Here's those pins that I was telling you about. You can see how easy these dock right onto the mini bed. You just clip one there. I have one clipped on the other side, and here is those little L fixtures. And you just need to decide like where you're going to place your fixtures, how many of them, depending on if it's the mini bed or the large bed. But I'm just putting these in there, putting these little magnets that came with the EUFYMAKE. This is one of the blanks that you can actually get from EUFYMAKE, because we're gonna do some 2.5 3D printing on these. And I had an afterthought. I was like, you know what? I should probably extend this a little bit more just to keep it nice and straight. So I just grabbed one of the straight pieces, put those on there so I could have a little bit of a bigger L on there so I could make sure everything stays nice and straight. And it's really that easy. Once you've got that done, you just lock in your mini bed and everything's perfectly aligned there. And you just go through your measuring process. If you want to use the camera, let it take its pictures, measure the height of the magnets that you put in. The next step is you're just gonna load in your files. So now we're over at the EUFYMAKE software. This is definitely not one of my best masterpieces. With a little help from ChatGPT, helped me generate some famous places icons for these magnets. We got the Great Smoky Mountains, Muir Woods, and I knew that I wanted to make these little magnets. Like, you know, if someone traveled to someplace, they could get a little memento of where they went. And I also wanted to make sure that I used the 2.5 3D effect on these. So I made sure that I changed all that. Now, one of the cool things that I love about the ULTIM8 Jig is that I don't really care if I overbleed over the edges of these magnets, and it's going to overbleed. In fact, I'm doing it on purpose because I know that I can just, with my fingernail or a little scraper tool, just scrape any overspray from the EUFYMAKE off the mat and it's clean. And that's one of the best parts about it. For those of you that are wondering, these 4 magnets with the 2.5 3D effect at 2.5 millimeters height took 1 hour.
1 hour later.
All right, so those just got done printing. We're about to use the feature that this was designed to be used for. So we're gonna use the reprint feature on the EUFYMAKE because we've used the ULTIM8 Jig to make our fixture for these magnets. And we'll get into how these look in just a second, but I will tell you they came out awesome. And one other thing I wanna point out here, which is another thing I love about this fixture, is you see how I was able to overprint? And just see that. Look at all that UV ink that splashed off to the left and the right. Well, guess what? That's all just gonna flake off because it can't adhere to the silicone mat. And that is another huge benefit of using the ULTIM8 Jig. Now that we've done with that batch, we're just gonna put our new magnets in, and they're nice, perfectly cornered up, exact same position that they were. No, didn't have to make any outlines or anything like that. Just slap them in there and hit the reprint feature on the EUFYMAKE, and we're good to go for the next batch. So let's do that, and then we'll take a look at all of them, and we'll talk about some of the more juicy bits of the ULTIM8 Jig. So one little note that I wanted to point out, to use the reprint feature, you actually have to turn it on. It is not on by default, and you can do that by hitting the little EUFYMAKE settings icon in the upper left-hand corner and go into your settings, and you'll see a feature in there that allows you to turn on this reprint or batch print function feature. They don't have it on by default because you have to make sure that it's only used for batch printing of things that are the exact same size and the exact same height, because they don't want you switching objects in there so the print head comes by and crashes, because it doesn't do any measuring. It just goes ahead and prints, assuming that you know what you're doing and that you're putting the same exact object in over and over and over again. So just keep that in mind. Be safe when you're using the reprint feature, and you do have to activate it yourself because it's not on by default. All right, so now that this second batch is done, why don't we take a little look-see at these magnets. Man, they came out super cool. And the registration is pretty good for using the camera. You know, keep in mind, I was just kind of quickly throwing it on there, but you notice the overspray there again. We're gonna flick some of that off here in a second so I can show you how easy that comes off. But I'm really happy with the way these came out, and the raised 2.5 3D effect is really cool and adds a super pro look to these. All right, so let's try to get some of this UV printed stuff off of here. You might want to get yourself like a little plastic scraper, but let's just see if we don't even need that. We take this piece right here, and look at that. It just comes right off. I love that. Take those little pins off either side, and you could probably just flex the mat. I'm gonna try that and see if it just pops right off. Yep, it just comes right off. I'm literally just falling off. I love that. And if you flex it, the little stuff inside the holes just pops out. All that little ink that got down in the pinholes completely just falls right out. Just like it's supposed to. So that is probably one of the bigger benefits of having the ULTIM8 Jig mats, is that they're made of silicone. So they're really, really easy to clean up. All right, so what are my final thoughts on the ULTIM8 Jig for the EUFYMAKE UV printer? Well, I think you can tell by some of the demos that we did that I really like this little accessory for the EUFYMAKE. It's very easy to use. It's very, very well thought out. The parts are high quality. I can't see anyone without it. Honestly, if you have a EUFYMAKE, you have to have this accessory, especially if you want to do batch printing, repeat printing, which is something that EUFYMAKE integrated into their software finally, which That feature alone is super, super handy. The Ultimate Jig definitely gets a thumbs up in my book. I'm super glad that they sent me one here, so I have it to use with my EUFYMAKE. It's going to come in super handy all the time. I know that they're making tiny little improvements, but what I showed you here is pretty much the final product, and it is a great product. So I want to thank you again for hanging out with me as I reviewed the Ultimate Jig, and until then, we'll see you around on Laser Engraving 911.